Back in the Pleistocene era, before the internet, before cell phones, and back when I was skinny enough to squeeze between parked cars without having to turn sideways, I dated. Those quote marks around the word date, sorry, I forgot that we're not reading this. I dated. Those quote marks are deliberate because the kind of guys I went out with did not take me on dates per se. There was no dinner, no dropping me off at home afterwards, no follow-up phone call to say how much they liked me and to ask if I'd see them again. The guys I went out with, they were all musicians in bands. Considered a couple of 40-ouncers, a backstage perch at their shitty band's gig in a club with 5 goateed friends in the audience. This was the 90s and everyone, even my hardcore lesbian friends, had a goatee. They'd remark on my need to maybe lay off the donuts once they got my clothes off, never called me again, dumped me for someone blonde or emaciated, left me with various rank bodily souvenirs that threatened to require a trip to the free clinic. That was dating, and I did it for a very long time. Maybe I will sit down. But dear reader, like every other girl who grew up with headphones on and a book in her hands, I believed in love. And I figured eventually I'd meet someone who did too. After years of swimming in the fetid pool of local musicians, I decided it was time to try something else, with a lot of teeth-gritting embarrassment that even as a marginally attractive writer-musician, blessed with rather impressive tits, I just couldn't meet someone nice, so I started answering personal ads. Back before the internet, this was a very dicey proposition because the local alt weeklies that ran personals did not feature photographs or much beyond a paragraph or so of self-aggrandizing, cryptic description. Luckily, they still had copy editors back then, because spelling is a major, bad spelling is a major libido killer. Nothing says back off like someone describing themselves as intersetting. I decided to rule out any ads from writers, because that's too much like masturbating, or musicians, because I was tired of itching. And I answered one from a guy who sounded like he might be kind of sweet. He liked vintage soul and jazz, and he lived in a cool part of San Francisco, and he did not play in a band, thank God. He was a DJ. This all takes place before being a DJ had the kind of douchey, pejorative, electro-techno, baby pacifier sucking, day-glow rave connotations it does for most of us now. I was okay with the idea of someone who owned a lot of records, because I own a lot of records too. We met up a few days later and went for drinks at the Knock Knock, a hole-in-the-wall bar in the Haight. It wasn't too noisy as to drown out all possible conversation, and I was pleased to find he was attractive and soft-spoken. He worked in some sort of office grunt job that involved drudgery and filing, which was something we had in common. And he had his own car. Praise Jesus. I was so tired of guys who dated me just because I owned a truck. It was handy for shuttling amps to gigs. Anyway, there wasn't anything particularly hellish about the date. We had a nice chat. I cracked through some of his shy facade with a few stupid jokes. And after a few drinks, we walked around the Panhandle for a while, stepping over passed-out drunks and crusty gutter punks. I think we even held hands. At 21, I was a hand-holding virgin. Again, my typical type was the kind of guy who walked at least 3 feet ahead of me so that no one would realize we were together. All in all, it was kind of a sweet night, and although he was a bit shorter than me, I decided I liked him. We walked back to my car, parked the typical San Francisco distance away, 5 miles uphill the whole way. And I gave him a kiss and a hug, which he said was nice. He even giggled. It was adorable. But then he got one of those cloudy male looks that inevitably precedes bad news, and he shuffled his feet a little while before saying, I had a good time, but I might not see you again for a while. Oh yeah, I replied, trying to be casual, but I was thinking, fuck, gonorrhea, or rehab. Yeah, I had some trouble recently and I've got to take care of it. He was peering intently at the pavement throughout this conversation, studiously avoiding looking up into my eyes. "Really, what's up?" I asked, growing ready to bolt if the words free clinic or anger management were mentioned. Yeah, I'm going to jail." "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, I'm gonna end up chopped up in a dumpster and I'll never publish my book, and fuck, what will my roommate do with my stuff, and shit, I have a paper on hermaphrodites and Shakespeare due next week, and crap, my mom's angry at me already, and shit, where are my keys?" I surreptitiously fished my keys out of my pocket and started to back slowly up the street, hoping that my ability to sprint across the basketball court would suddenly reemerge after years of literary lethargy. It was Saturday night in the hate, and somehow the streets were suddenly deserted. The guy finally looked up and held up his hands. "Not what you think," he said. "It's county jail." "Oh, that's great. At least it's not San Quentin," I thought. Yeah, he continued. "Yeah, it's because I live in San Francisco and I have a car, you know, and parking sucks here, and I got a lot of tickets, and I forgot to pay them, and they impounded the car, and I missed a court date, and another one, and I'm going in for a month or so. But I'd like to hang out, you know, when I get out." At this point, I was pretty sure I wasn't in any immediate danger, but I was also ready to get the hell home. I mean, parking tickets? Parking tickets? Seriously, it's not even badass. If he'd robbed a bank to feed his impoverished grandmother or something, it would have been okay. I mean, I've even been arrested. But parking tickets? Come on, dude. "Oh, well, good luck," I said, turning to finish trudging uphill to my car. "Nice to meet you." "Hey," he called out, "can I write you?" Reader, I am weak. I had never received a letter from prison before, and I figured it would be good for my cachet, and maybe I could use it in a book later on. Remember, nonfiction writer. But I'd also seen Looking for Mr. Goodbar enough times that I knew that giving this dude my home address would mean I would definitely end up on the side of a milk carton. At the same time, I was the music director of my college radio station, so I hastily scribbled out that address, jumped in my truck, and drove home, where I drank a few beers and thought about how pathetic and ridiculous the attempted dating had turned out to be. I figured I was doomed to a life of calling amps for guys who thought toothpaste was bourgeois and showering was anathema. I decided to take vows to live the monastic solitude of records, writing, and books. A week or two later, a red ink missive did indeed arrive from Parking Ticket Dude. A brief epistle letting me know how much he liked me, how much he'd enjoyed our date, and other romantic sentiments clouded only by two obvious problems. He was in jail, and he couldn't spell. It was tragic because it was a lovely letter any cynical, hard-hearted woman would be lucky to get, but it was full of mistakes like the food H-E-A-R is better than they said it would be. And he spelled my first and last names incorrectly, and well, he was in jail for parking tickets. Shortly afterwards, I started going out with the biggest fuck-up I'd ever gone out with, who was an alcoholic moron, treated me like shit, and we stayed together for a long time. Sometimes he'd disappear for weeks on end, or I'd come home and he was passed out naked on the couch, and there was a message on the answering machine from a woman asking if he was ready to do the paternity test. Sometimes in that time, I think wistfully of Parking Ticket Dude. He was nice. He wrote me a nice letter. I'd handled it badly. I never wrote him back, didn't return his calls when he got sprung. And I felt guilty for a long time for being so callous. But I eventually came to my senses with the fuck-up guy, dumped him, had a couple short but decent relationships, met a really nice guy with good hygiene, went out with him even after I found out he was not only a musician but a drummer, married him, and 13 years later I'm living a pretty good life. Whatever happened to Parking Ticket Dude, I wish him well. I hope he's happy and healthy. And most of all, I really hope he remembers to feed the meter and move the car on street sweeping day. Thank you.